Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the work session for the Owensboro Board of Commissioners, August 8th, 2023. I'll call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the opioid settlement update. Mark Pfeiffer, City Attorney, and Angela Wager, Director of Finance and Support Services and everything else.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I'm going to speak a little bit about the background on these opioid settlements. In 2012, opioid prescriptions in this country peaked at 255 million prescriptions. As a result of the opioid crisis, there were various lawsuits filed against drug manufacturers and distributors. The primary allegation of those lawsuits was that they were engaged in deceptive marketing practices to hide the addictive nature of their drugs. Governments, local governments, and state governments were included in a lot of those lawsuits. Those were streamlined into one case that was called In Re National Prescription Opiate Litigation, which was before the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio. States were then given the option to either participate in that litigation or proceed on their own. Kentucky decided to participate in that combined litigation and accepted various proposed settlement agreements that arose from that case. Some states opted out, most significantly West Virginia. The city of Owensboro has also accepted and opted into the settlement agreements. There were three main rounds of settlements. The first two there actually occurred on the same day. The settlement agreements were dated July 21 of 2021. A group of distributors reached a settlement agreement for the total amount of $21 billion. Janssen, whose parent company is Johnson & Johnson, had a settlement agreement of $5 billion. And then one that's coming through now here in the near future, I think the city opted in April of this year, where various manufacturers and pharmacies entering into proposed settlement agreements totaling over $18 billion. And as Angela will say in a little bit, the city's starting to get some of this money in. As far as the legal background here, as a result of all this money coming into the state, Kentucky passed a statute which created the Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission. It has 9 voting members and 2 non-voting members, and that commission is charged with awarding the funds that come into the state to various eligible programs, making recommendations for policy changes, and then promulgating any administrative regulations that they deem necessary. There are, as of right now, there are no administrative regulations that have been passed. And then KRS 15.93 establishes what's called the Opioid Abatement Trust Fund. Now, the city's money is not held in that trust fund, but the half that goes to the state government is. Angela, I think you're up.
Ms. Waniger?
Yes, I actually had my notes starting on the next slide, but
Okay.
So the funding overview summary, back on slide 3, where Mark presented the total settlement amount of 44.5, which was all the 3 settlements combined. And while that's unimaginable, the amount of money, right? It's 45.5 billion, not million. How does that money get divvied out? And so the settlement provisions take into account 4 factors as they relate to any given state that opted into the settlement. And the first one is those being the number of overdose deaths. And 2, the number of residents with substance abuse disorder. And 3, the number of opioids prescribed or delivered within a said state. And 4, the population of that state. And so for the funding overview summary, Brown Greer PLC, you'll hear that name quite often. They're the law firm, and they devote a lot of their time to multiple claims resolution and administration cases. They're located in Richmond, Virginia, and they will be the directing administrator for settlement of the opioid funds and distribution. And what they'll do is coordinate the allocation and the payment of each funding amount out to each individual location. The City of Owensboro has a case manager assigned to us should we have any questions or assistance that we may need. In order to receive the settlement funds, we had to opt into the settlement, and that's what Mark had alluded to earlier. And it's just an agreement for the mayor's signature for each manufacturer or pharmacy or distributor that's involved in the case. As far as opting in, when we opt in, we also agree not to pursue any future legal action against these parties. There's also language that explicitly states that there's no guarantees regarding the amounts or timing of any payments. So while we do have estimates, there's still no guarantee on receiving those estimated payments. Next slide, thank you. So you've heard the lawsuits referred to by year. We've got the 2021 national settlement, and that's a settlement where we've already received some funds from it. And this settlement represents the 3 of the largest distributors and 1 manufacturer. The 2002 national settlement is a settlement where the details are still being debated, and this settlement represents 3 pharmacy chains and 2 manufacturers. All settlements involving states and the subdivisions require opting in, and the city has opted in for all parties in both national settlements. This slide provides a little more detail on the distributor parties involved in the 2021 national settlement. The 3 largest distributors, AmerisourceBergen, Bergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. They have agreed to collectively pay up to $21 billion over 18 years. The over 18 years does not necessarily equate to 1 payment per year. It's just a given time frame for which these payments must be made within. However, each payment is identified as payment number 1 through payment number 18. We have received 2 of the 18 payments on December 15, 2022, and we received a 3rd payment just last week, August 2nd, 2023, for a total receipt of life-to-date payments of $110,373. We're scheduled to receive payments number 4 through 18, totaling $833,689 over the next 16 years. The total settlement, again, we're not guaranteed to get, from the distributors is $944,063. This slide provides detail on the manufacturer to the 2021 national settlement from Janssen. You will also hear this settlement referred to as the J&J settlement, and that's because their parent company is Johnson & Johnson. They have agreed to pay up to $5 billion over 9 years. Now, 74% of that $5 billion, or $3.7 billion, has to be paid within the first 3 years. Each payment, again, is identified as payment number 1 through 19. We have received 5 of the 9 payments on December 15th for a total of life-to-date payments of $156,652. We're scheduled to receive the remaining payments of $60,197 over the next 7 years. The total settlement for the Owensboro from the manufacturer is $216,849. So between slide 9 and 10, the total known funding from the 2021 national settlement for Owensboro, we can expect to receive $1,160,912. So now we'll talk about the 2002 national settlement a bit. So we're still waiting for the final details on this settlement at this point in time, but the parties included in this settlement, and like I said earlier, we have signed an agreement. We've opted in a separate agreement for each of these parties. So we have the pharmacy chains of CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart, and the manufacturers Teva and Allergan. We have opted in for these. As I've said, the total settlement from these parties will be $18.5 billion. In addition to the $18.5 billion, Teva has additional required provisions. They have the option of either providing $1.2 billion of their generic version of Narcan or the $240 million in cash. This next slide is a little busy and may be hard for the viewing audience to see the detail. Actually, this is a slide that I brought back with me from the National Government Finance Officers Association conference that I attended in May. This slide lists all the parties that were initially involved in the 2022 settlement. You will see that there's some names on here that we've not signed an opt-in agreement for. Those parties include Endo International, Purdue Pharma, Mallinckrodt, and McKinsey and Company. These companies, the reason why we've not signed an opt-in agreement for them is that they are, they have filed for bankruptcy. So their settlements will come out of the bankruptcy courts, and Brown Greer is also handling these cases for us as well. And so for the timeline for future distributions, all we know for sure at this point is that we will not receive another payment from the J&J settlement for 5 years. So at this point in time, that's all we know for sure. And again, as I see through everything I read, any estimates on future amounts are speculative, and that's just due to the intricacies involved in structuring the settlement payments. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mark.
I'm going to talk finally about how these settlement funds are to be used. The settlement agreements require state and local governments to use funds for what is generally called opioid remediation. Kentucky has passed a statute listing various eligible opioid remediation programs. That statute deals specifically with the state opioid abatement trust fund, but the programs or projects listed are also applicable to cities. The first thing that the statute says is that you can actually use monies that you receive to reimburse the cost already expended for various things. The three statutory items are any sort of treatment service, emergency response services, and then administering what our statutes call an opioid antagonist, but Narcan is really what you're talking about there. And then in addition to reimbursement, our statutes then list what kinds of projects you can provide funding for that will satisfy the state. There are 29 categories listed in the statute. I'm not going to go through all of them. I've broken those down into 6 main categories. The first is somewhat self-explanatory: treatment and recovery services. One thing that's worth noting there is you can also receive or have a project that funds treatment for what is called co-occurring drug addiction and mental health services. So if you've got someone who is addicted to opioids but is also a methamphetamine addict, then they could receive treatment, or the program for their treatment could be funded. The second main category is life support services, and so that would include things like transportation to and from treatment, housing for an addict. The third main category is education or training, and that would include kind of what you see in the medical field. You can get scholarships or loan repayment for certified addiction counselors. Then any sort of training program for doctors or first responders or law enforcement. And then finally, if you wanted to engage in a public education program on the dangers of opioids, you could do that as well. The fourth main category I've just kind of labeled mother-child. That would include any recovery and support for pregnant women, treatment for babies born with what's called neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is just what a child goes through when it's withdrawing from the opioids that the pregnant mother has taken. And then finally, believe it or not, I mean, the statute's very broad about what you can use money for. One thing that they talk about is housing for children removed from their parents who were opioid addicts. So you could pay for foster care services for a child under that circumstance. The fifth category there I've just labeled legal or judicial. So any treatment for inmates or people on probation or parole would be covered and eligible under our statute. Or if you wanted to kind of hook up with pretrial services to connect individuals who'd been arrested for opioid possession, if you wanted to connect them to treatment through a program, you could do that as well. Finally, the last provision there is what I just called catch-all. The statute basically says that if you have a use that satisfies one of the settlement agreements, then it satisfies our statute as well. And then finally, if you have a use that you want to propose that falls outside all the listed categories, you can do that by applying to the State Opioid Abatement Advisory Commission for permission to engage in that program. And if they grant it, then it's eligible. The only requirement for using these funds is that the city has to file an annual certification once they start using funds, basically describing who's using the funds, how much, and then any other information that the commission requests. And so we're prepared to take any questions if you have them.
Any questions from up here? I've kind of been involved with this from day one with AG Cameron and trying to keep track of that convoluted mess you just went through. They're actually, the 24th of August, there's going to be a legislative committee in Frankfurt that's going to meet, and they're inviting a few cities to come and tell our story, and I've put us on the agenda if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
I think you've explained it so well that most of the legislators have a little bit of understanding of what's going on. Opioids are bad. There's money. Need to get it to people that are affected. But I think a little bit deeper dive into that would be helpful for them to really understand what they're. And I only speak to this because when I got hurt, I got addicted to morphine. I can tell you how dead blame hard it is to get rid of an addiction. So I'd like to put us down. You know, the Kentucky League of Cities wants 2 or 3 cities to come talk, and if you don't mind, if that's okay with you, City Manager.
Yeah, we're happy to engage and represent the interests of Kentucky cities.
So I'll get you more information as it becomes available.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm a little disappointed in the numbers and how slow it's going to be dribbled out. You know, it's not going to have the impact that I had hoped that it would have, but at least it is something anyway. So, okay, next item on the agenda, Central Dispatch update. City Manager Nate Pagan and Paul Nave, the 911 Director.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make some introductory comments, but they will be brief, and the bulk of the presentation will be delivered by Paul, who of course operates this facility on a day-to-day basis. As I think we're all aware, the county has initiated some discussion about potentially terminating from the current structure. And so Commissioner Glenn asked if I would provide sort of an overview of what the structure is now. So today we won't really get into the issues with the county or what may look like going forward. He just asked for a reminder of what the context is and our current agreement is, and then Paul will explain how that operates. And so in 2009 and then beginning of 2010, City and County did an agreement where Central Dispatch would be consolidated into the police department. Prior to that, the two agencies, the city and the county, had separate dispatch centers, and the county had their own dispatch facility on the second floor of the courthouse at the time. And so there was a strong desire from both entities to consolidate into one, which has been done now for 13 or going on 14 years in operation. And so it's worked pretty well. And per that agreement, then there's an oversight committee that has, I believe, 7 members. There's 2 members from the Owensboro Police Department, 2 from the Sheriff's Office, 1 OPD rep, a county fire rep, and then a volunteer fire rep as well from the county's perspective, because those are the end users who are attached to the other side of dispatch that Paul's telecommunicators talk to on the system typically, in addition to those who call. And so the structure has worked well. We share those costs with the county based on what we refer to as call volume. And so essentially that means that based on who generates the calls out and who's punched out on a pro rata share. So when the Owensboro Police Department is punched out, right, that's one that's at our expense. If it's the Sheriff's Department who's punched out, then that's at the county's expense. And so generally that works pretty well. That is a standard structure we've learned across the country for shared dispatches are pretty common. In fact, I think in Kentucky there's only 2 or 3 standalone communities where they have a separate city and county dispatch. And so it's pretty typical that we have a shared system in Kentucky, and it's very typical that they're based on the call volume. So it's a structure that's worked well. It's a structure that's been adopted, frankly, in many communities across the Commonwealth and across our country. So in that current agreement, I think the city funds 72% and the county 27 or 27, just based on the call volume. And that resets every 3 years based on the prior 3 years of call volume. So that's worked well. And so for some reason, the county seems to want to perhaps deviate from that, even though it's extremely typical across the Commonwealth and the country. So we're engaging in those conversations with them. And again, the point today was just to provide sort of a reminder and context for that. So that's the general structure. And then Mayor Paul will present the rest of the presentation with really how it operates on a practical level.
Okay, just for Paul, point of clarification, when you say the county, it was only reported that the sheriff's department was interested in separating it. You're saying everything that the county does is now, because I didn't see it reported, that the whole county, all the services.
No, it would be. And really the agreement is between the city of Owensboro and Davis County Fiscal Court. So it is the county proper that is the other partner in this and who provides that funding, because the sheriff office is a large portion of that, but also the county fire, which is under the fiscal court umbrella. So fiscal court, I think under the whole county umbrella, is the actual partner in it. And so the letter for potential termination came from Judge Executive Charlie Caslin.
Thank you. Mr. Nay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioners. Mayor. All right. So these are statistics that you can see. We did the quarter of the first part of last year to this year, and that's what City Manager Pagan was referencing. These are the numbers referencing each agency and what they responded to. So you can see this year, the county sheriff is up a little bit, and Owensboro Police Department right comparable to last year. So you can see there, and a lot of the variables there depends on the emergency that we have. So some of them are non-controlling, some of them are officer initiated. So that being said, if we have a bad storm coming through and it affects the city, then the city calls go up. If a storm comes through and affects the county calls go up. So it's unique to the situation and the location of the incident. Any questions on that? So this is our 911 call volume. So we had 71 as of, this is the first, July of this year compared to full years, all the others that I couldn't compare by quarters, but we are right on meeting the 153 non-emergency. The outbound calls of 37,000, so we're close to what we'll do for the whole year. We're at 24,000, so 24,000 911, so I think we'll be over 47 for this next year of 911 cell phone calls. Landlines continually go down because people don't have landline calls, they're going to VoIP. And then our VoIP calls are going up every year, so you see that we'll probably be a little bit over 3,500 VoIP calls for a total of 136,000 transactions this year, 286,000 transactions of calls last year. So the diversity of our population is inherent as every population, and we have to respond to emergencies to everyone. So it doesn't make me any difference if you're from this community and not from this community. You have an emergency, we're here to help make a difference in your life, right? That's what it's about. So we have Spanish interpreters, Burmese, and so on. So you can see all the different languages that we've had to interpret on 911 over the year of this year, the first quarter, second quarter. So you can see the diversity of the population that we're managing and servicing through the community. Yes, sir.
Is back on that other slide, is that Karen and Burmese, are they not combined?
They're different dialects.
Dialects, that's how you're going by dialect.
Yeah, so
okay.
they are Burmese, but they're totally different dialect and a different adverse community, if you will. Does that make sense? Right. You're welcome. This is what a 911 screen looks like. So it's a busy screen, and you see all the 911 calls. So we have 4 landlines and VoIP lines, and we have 4 cell phone lines and 2 additional VoIP lines for rollover. Then we have the admin lines across the bottom that are VoIP and copper for redundancy that we have built in. So that's what a dispatcher does every day to answer calls, transfer
Paul, you use a
calls.
lot of acronyms. VoIP is VoIP, Voice Internet Protocol, so it's
Correct.
an internet phone line.
Correct, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. And so we have a diversity of those calls, and so all those stats that you have before, this system here is how they answer the calls, transfer the calls, and so on every single day. So I want to talk about our hiring process before I go to the next part. So we've gone through, we're starting our 5th hiring process today, since January the 1st. And do I need to get that for you? Leland, all right. So we're on our 5th hiring process starting today. Since January the 1st, we've got one person that we were able to get through the background check, offer a job offer, and they accept it, and they've been employed by us. 5 hiring processes. This last one, we had 40 applicants, 16 people showed up for the testing, 14 passed the testing. We did interviews and sent many of those through the background check. We had people that declined the job offer. We had people that declined to fill out any of the paperwork after we to get through the process. And we had a few fail the post-offer test. And the post-offer tests are all related to the KRS, the state statute. It's not anything that we do that's not state law required. You have to have a suitability test. You have to have a psychological test. You have to have a polygraph test. You have to have drug testing. So all that has to be done in order to meet the obligations that the state requires for a telecommunicator to be hired. And why is that important? Because you want someone that's suitable, that's stable, to be able to answer 911, process the calls, and keep calm and be able to do the job. It's not suited for just anyone. And that's part of the problem of hiring, is everybody just can't do this job. It has to be a trained person, and it has to be compassion in their heart in order to do this job. So I just want to give hats off to Joe Hall, who works with the police department. She's just a godsend to me that has worked diligently calling these people, following up on these people. She makes sure that they know when their time is to be in appointments, and still some don't show up. So we're doing everything we can to get people through the process and keep things on track. Any questions on that? So we're going to start into the meat and bones of it. So when 911 call comes in, we use technology called Rapid SOS. So we can pinpoint a call within reason to feet, just from here to the podium and back as feet. We can measure a call. And the CAD system we can right-click it and say, hey, your address is 123 Main Street, and we can create an incident, and it'll flag on the map, and we'll be able to dispatch you proficiently, right? But it takes training of my staff to navigate through this, to understand the ins and outs of the location accuracy, and help the caller get the location. Sometimes they can't speak, and sometimes they're lost and don't understand their location. This is what a CAD screen looks like, and I'm going to play an audio so you can hear some of the calls as we go through this.
Yelvington, East Davis County, and EMS Zone 2. Respond to accident with injuries. U.S. Highway 60 East and U.S. Highway 231 North at U.S. Highway 60E, U.S. Highway 231N. Repeating.
You can pause that.
Yelvington, East Davis County.
So that's our automated system that the dispatcher will enter the basic information, and the system dispatches that. So an example of this call, there was one near this location that was a wreck with injuries. We had to get Life Flight, the helicopter ambulance. We had to get AMR ambulance. We had to get the fire department. We had to get the sheriff's office. Sheriff's office needed wrecker service. Fire department wanted the air ambulance. So we have multiple people working on a county incident that are obligated to other channels. So I say we have an information person that's obligated to city police that's handling a county request. We have a call taker that's supposed to be taking calls for the city and the county that's handling call requests for the county at this point, or the city. So they're completely doing all of the work at one time as a team. And by that I mean it takes about 5 to 7 minutes to get an air ambulance, because you have to stay on the phone, get the weather, make sure that the pilots want to fly. You have to get the lat long. You have to give them a landing zone. You have to communicate that with the fire department. You have to patch the channel so the helicopter can talk to the ground crew here for the landing. So all that comes into play, and it's a team effort. So my whole staff is doing that. Is that every single day? It's not. But when it happens, time is of the essence. And if I don't have enough staff to do this, then there's going to be a delay. When there's a delay, I'm afraid someone's going to get hurt. So that's what the team effort is, and why we have to have trained and proficient staff in order to do the job. So these are the information you have to have: the basic, the address, the phone number, the caller's name, the call type, and so on. And all that information is entered into the CAD system every single day. And then this is where all the calls are held. You can see all the calls on the right. So most of the days we have around 20 to 30 calls consistently on the screen that we have going on every day, all day long. Well, that's correct, 24/7. But at night, it's like a bell curve, if you will. So starting at like 6 in the morning, it starts to go up, and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it peaks, and it stays that way to about 7, 8 at night. Then 9, it goes down a little bit, and then about midnight to 1 or 2, then it bottoms out, and then at 6 o'clock, here we go again. It's like every single day, pretty much. There's always variables. Storms come through, things like that, and it will peak. But other than that, it's the bell curve. This is an example of using the automated system. You can see the times on that we are using CAD to CAD and using US Digital to dispatch calls, and you see our times of the call came in at 18:16. It went out at 18:06, 21 seconds, and 18:06 and 28 seconds. CAD was punched out. And so what I mean, we use technology that transfers our CAD information over to ambulance service CAD in Evansville, right? Their CAD immediately dispatches an ambulance based off the GPS of that ambulance. We shave 40 seconds off of ambulance dispatch by using the technology. 40 seconds, the ambulance is going quicker because of the technology. And that 40 seconds, guys, if you're doing CPR, just count 40 seconds right now. And if you're doing CPR on a loved one, 40 seconds is it's just a huge time when you're doing CPR, and that we shave that off using the technology. And this is an example of that.
Engine 3 and EMS Zone 3. Respond to subject unconscious, 1311 West 2nd Street at Cadillac Motel. Repeating. Engine 3 and EMS Zone 3. Respond to.
So this technology is for the city and the county. Everyone is treated exactly the same when it comes to responses, right? This is an example of our CAD to CAD for EMS. So you can see at the bottom, we can tell when an ambulance is responding. They can see when a fire truck is responding over there. All that is transferred to both agencies, and all that is transparent in all of our incidents. This one here is a structure fire. So the importance of this structure fire, as you can see the time the call came in and when it was punched out, is around 30 seconds. So while the dispatcher's on the telephone talking to the caller to get them out of the house, get information, the system is sending the fire. So the fire is going in 30 seconds. ISO says we need to get that fire punched out in a minute, right? We're beating that using our technology. 30 seconds, the fire department is dispatched and responding. And I'll give you examples.
Davis County 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, we've got a fire upstairs, and
Are you at 4100 Ronnie Lake Road?
Yes, I'm on Ronnie Lake Road. Is this water help?
Is it inside the residence that's on fire?
Upstairs, and I haven't been up there. It's my son-in-law that found it, and it does smell electrical. Oh my gosh, it's in the other room. Oh my gosh.
Okay, everybody,
So
make sure everybody's out of the residence, okay? I have them headed that way.
So she's still talking. Fire's going.
Utica, East Davis County, Davis County.
So that's an example of using the technology that we have to get fire going while the dispatcher's talking. And this is an example of a fire alarm. We use it's called ASAP to PSAP. We partner with ASAP to PSAP, so the alarm companies send us alarms immediately. There's no interception with the phone, no calls. It's CAD, receives it, and we can dispatch it. We dispatch that in, 20 seconds? it was dispatched on a fire alarm.
Engine 2, Quint 2, Engine 4, Rescue 1, and Command 95. Respond to fire alarm 2301, Windhaven Drive at Kite Home Center.
So you can see the purple in the middle is we can communicate with the alarm company without calling. It's directly from our CAD to their system. It says you have a key holder. Do you know when the ETA is going to be? Do you have all that information? And so it's immediate and it's all time stamped. And the fire department can see that information too. Do you have privy to that? And this is the medical call that I'll show you.
Davis County 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, I'm at work at my construction site, and one of my coworkers is having chest pain.
Okay, what's the address?
The address, 11275, Highway 231.
Highway 2.
So that's an example of a medical. So we can go from a simple accident to a cardiac with someone screaming to a burglary in progress. So our day is never the same, and those are the calls that my dispatchers deal with every single day, all day long. So no one calls us, you know, if they're having a good day, unfortunately, but we're there to make a difference in their lives and help them when they do call. This is an example of our radio screen. All the channels that we have to monitor. We have the 2 police channels. You can see the 2 police channels in blue, and then the brown are the sheriff's channels. Then we have the red in the middle are county and city fire channels. We have the school police that we monitor. We have the ambulance we have to monitor. So all those radios that we're monitoring with the staff that we have, with a minimum of 5 on days, 5 on nights, and 4 on midnights. We do all of this that you see constantly, right? And it's just, it's a lot of work on my staff, but they do it because they care. They care about the people that we serve. I care about the people that we serve. And we've implemented all this technology, and not just for one community, not just for the city or just for the county, but for everyone in the community that we make a difference for, because you can't put a price on a person, right? And so everything we invested into this system, the radio system so they can communicate together, the CAD system, the MDT system so they can communicate, all this has been done to benefit the entire community. The mapping system, we have mapped apartments. So the state required us to geocode every single ball field, mile markers, apartments. So when you get a 911 call, it pinpoints the nearest address down to the apartment level. It'll give that recommendation. We can confirm that with a caller and get someone going in seconds compared to minutes trying to get an address. We use technology called What 3 Words, and this is City Hall. All those little squares are a 10 by 10 square. Every square, there's 3 words across the whole globe of the world that I can use my technology. Once your call comes in at the address here, I can put a query on your phone. Once it comes in from the system, it'll give me what 3 words, and it'll tell me if you're in the parking lot at that address or you are on the sidewalk at that address. It pinpoints that location, each one of those little bitty squares that you see. I can pinpoint your emergency. Why is that important? If you call 911, you're having a heart attack, and we have your address, and you're out back, and we go to the front door, that's not going to benefit you, right? But we see you on the ground out back based off that square hit in the field in the back of the house. We're going to send the responders to the back of the house first, not knocking on your front door, and delay time, because every second counts. And this is an example of maps that you can see closer, the mile markers we have and the apartments that you see at that hotel. Every single hotel room has been geocoded so we can get a location. City and county. So when you look at why did we consolidate, it's because prior to the consolidation, if a call came into the city and it was a county, they had to transfer the call to the county. If the call came into the county and it was a city call, they had to transfer the call to the city. And the caller had to repeat themselves twice. But by law, I cannot transfer a call unless I know your location. I have to get your name, your address, and your phone number and transfer that call. Why? Because if you get disconnected and I can't get you again, the liability falls on me by not getting you help to that location if the call was transferred and not followed through by the other agency. That means same thing for Indiana. We get calls from Spencer County. where the calls bounce off our towers and they're having emergencies in Indiana. We have to validate that address before we transfer it over to them. So I'm going to show you, if a 911 call comes in any of that area, that city and county could bounce off. You see that right off of 231 is Davis County High School's in the county. Right across it's in the city. Behind it's in the city, and down the street from 231 in front of the college is city, but the school's on the right after the college is county. And then all that is in that area. So if a call comes in there and it hits a cell tower, then it's going to bounce to probably the city. And if it's a county address, we'd have to transfer it to the county. If it's a county gets it, transfer to the city, which is it's just not the right thing to do. When everything's coming to one place right now, and we can help the caller and get them help and get what they needed with one stop, then that's where it needs to be done. Example of a burglary alarm. Same thing that we have is we used ASEP to PSEP. That call was out in 30 seconds, 40 seconds. So it works for fire, police, and ambulance. So I know it's a lot throughout. You have through a lot of acronyms and information, but I'm here to tell you I love what I do for the city, and I love what I do for the community and making a difference for these people, because one of these days it's going to be me that needs help. And I hope that this system is functional to what it is now, 20 years from now when I'm not here, but I may need the help. So if you have any questions.
Yeah, Paul, I have one. If you got what would happen to the response time if it's a city-county boundary, kind of like what you're talking about, if the county separates?
So we had that problem in the beginning when there was always a delay. So delay is going to be a minute or two, or however many seconds it takes for us to get the information from the caller. Know, is it a medical or is it a burglary, right? Do I need to send it to the ambulance first and then call over to the city police to get the fire going? So there's another delay, get the fire going. Or is it a police call? If it's a police call, then I get the information, then I transfer it over to the police, and they get the information from them, and they dispatch the law accordingly. So that's the process is going to be. So it's what's the delay? It could be a minute. It could be 2 minutes. I mean, you just don't know. If the caller's panicked, you can't get any information from them, and it's going to delay it even longer. And then when someone calls 911 and they're panicked, they can't remember their address sometimes. We have to use the map and say, are you at this address? Is this your location? Because you just panic and you forget what you're doing at times, right? And so we're trained to use the technology, use what we have to help facilitate them to get help to them.
So you're saying the response time will be longer if it separates things?
Absolutely, it'll be longer because it's not going to one place.
Point of clarification, just a minute.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody? Commissioner Smith-Wright.
Paul, I want to commend you on the work that you do. The 12 years that I've been a commissioner, your attitude and your zeal for what you do has not changed one bit. And I had a friend in Kobe's that had an aneurysm, and I called 911, and we were sitting there, and they kept talking to me, and then the next thing I heard the ambulance coming, and I looked out the window, but they, like you said, they were trying to keep us calm, just talking to us. But I want to thank you personally for what you do, because I don't know, there's a lot of people that could not do that.
I thank you for that. And, to the day I walk out the door, I'm not going to change my zeal, because I truly care about the community and what I do. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Castler.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mr. Nave, you've done an excellent job since you've been running the Central Dispatch. Also, I was wondering, if it's even possible for people to work from their home, have some kind of a computer to hook up to dispatch, and if that would help solve some of the issues with personnel.
Sure. Is it possible technology-wise? Absolutely. That would be very, very expensive to do. We can do it. It would be very expensive because you have to VPN to the radio system, and you have to somehow get an ACD call distribution process so that it goes to the different locations at different times. All that's absolutely doable. I could be in California and dispatch from here if we had the connectivity and the equipment. So to answer your question, yes, it's doable, and I can look into the cost of it, but I don't know if it's cost effective to do it from home at this point yet.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that would help.
Sure.
You know, a lot of the banks and other companies through COVID switched to that, and some of them have embraced it and still do it today, you know. And I was just wondering if that would help solve some of the issues also.
Sure. But I'll be glad to look into that for you.
Okay, thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Anyone else? Well, I don't think anybody up here can do your job, so I hope you got your chain of command up to date when you decide to leave. You're going to be somewhat irreplaceable, I think.
Well, I appreciate you. If you have any other questions or anything I can do to help, I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. The next item on the agenda, indoor sports facility update. Assistant City Manager Leland Hancock and Tim Ross, Public Events Director.
Mayor, Tim is gone today, so I'm as good as it gets. And you talk about a tough act to follow.
Which half are you going to put on?
Yeah. Following dispatch, such an important role that we serve for this community as well. So happy to bring you today our indoor sports facility. I know the commission's talked about this for a good while now, and you can see in the picture before you a close rendering. Obviously, we got some colors and some different things to work on there, but a conceptual idea of what the exterior of the building will look like. From the picture that you see here, you're facing from the boardwalk pipelines parking lot, looking that way. So directly north of the building, or from the Owensboro sign, would be the new hotel and parking garage, and then we have parking the other direction down Third, where you see the car in the picture as well. So a pretty neat facility, a lot of effort, a lot of thought, a ton of thought and meetings, and working with the leagues, working with Amanda Rogers and Tim Ross and all the different groups to develop this roughly 86,000 square foot facility, which will have your typical layout of 7 basketball courts, which can be broken down into 14 volleyball courts and anywhere from 21 to 28 pickleball courts, depending on how tight you want to play. You can squeeze in about 100 archery targets. Of course, you can facilitate cheer and dance, and a modular turf field for soccer as well would be the upper 2 right-hand corner courts, kind of like the old, the current basketball floor at the Sports Center. You'd have a modular system you can lay down and play futsal or soccer on. You'll see a lot of automation in this facility, so that an individual operating, if they want to switch from volleyball to a different sport, your nets will lower down from the ceiling, your court dividers will lower down, your batting cages, different pieces like that, so that one individual can switch very quickly from one sport to another during the operations as they try to accommodate all of the different tournaments and demands and desires from the different groups that are in there playing. As I spoke earlier, we have parking close by, surface parking across the street on Third, across Cedar. We have the old Roberts Brothers parking lot. Then we have our new Locust Street parking garage as well. That's catty corner to the facility. Obviously, it's a fairly simple building layout-wise. 85 to 90% of it is basketball courts or open space for the different sports. We'll also have about 10,000 square feet of mezzanine space as well, which is kind of the brown area you see in the middle. So if you're a parent, a coach, a scout, or you just want to go in and watch the activities going on, you can get up and get a bird's eye view of the different activities. Of course, we've got adequate restrooms, concessions. You never have enough storage, but I feel like we've got a decent amount of storage, and should have a pretty good flow in and out of the building for the different groups that we entertain. That being said, I'll entertain any questions you may have on this project.
I get asked all the time, when? Sorry.
COVID has delayed a lot of different things, in the past. Recently, materials and items are beginning to become more prevalent and available, but currently we were looking at probably just December of 25 to see this building complete.
Hang in there like a hair in a biscuit, that's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
Anybody else like to speak?
Excuse me, Mayor.
Commissioner Castleton?
Thank you. You had mentioned the restrooms in there. Is there going to be restrooms at both ends of that facility?
There will be, yes, sir.
Okay. As far as concession stands, are the concessions going to be on one end or both ends?
Yeah, the concessions are located on one end closer to the entry, and you typically do that so that when people come in, that they can't sit and watch the games because otherwise they'll camp out and sit there for the entire day. So to be accommodating to all the different users and different groups coming through, you'll locate those so that you can't camp there all day. You go and eat lunch or eat a snack, and then you'll go back out and watch whichever sport is playing at that time.
How many different groups were involved in the overall design of it? Is this the completed design? This is
a proposed, pending everybody's happy with this. Obviously, we'll go back and work with the leagues as well and the different groups that participated, but pickleball, tennis, basketball, volleyball, dance, I'm trying to think, probably 9 to 10 different groups, archery. Anyone that would have a tournament that could go in this facility that has a local league as well has been at meetings discussing this.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
They've been pretty flexible, talking to them like kind of, everybody wants their own special deal, don't they? Never mind.
That's a tough question. We'll put it like this. It's a multi-use facility, so everyone will be able to utilize the building in one way, shape, form, or fashion. Is it perfect for any one group? I can't say that it's perfect. Otherwise, you would just design it for pickleball or just design it for basketball. But when you do that, you eliminate the rest. So I believe every one of them gets a win in this facility, and they get a very nice, very usable facility that can host some tournaments for this community.
That's what I wanted to hear from you. Commissioner Smith, Neesmith. Dang, that's hard.
Sorry. If I get married, well, I'll change my name. Okay.
I'm just going to call you Fred.
Okay, Fred works. Leland, I just have a question. Goes along with what Mark just asked, because I've had feedback from just different people that are obviously interested in it. And so will there be, I just don't know how things work, but there'll be an option where once the plan is out there, what you have now, where there would be like a 2-week time frame or a 30-day time frame, so that if I'm the basketball coach for Podunk and I want to make sure that you're doing this where I think, whereas we get everybody's input and we're not going to make everybody, answer everything that they need, but where they could get input from just the general public versus just working with the people that have worked so hard on this plan.
Yes, now that this design is public, obviously we'll go back to the different groups that we've been working with and let them have input on this design. And if anyone else out there has an idea, we'll entertain those. It is one that it's a little difficult because we're confined on a city block. There's actually, a ton of space there, but you're also fixed within the one shape where if you take a look at the one in Madisonville, it's a little longer, more of a rectangle. And each one, they do various shapes depending on where they're located and how they're built. But we'll be happy to entertain any of those questions or,
The few people that I have spoken with, they were not being negative or criticized. They were just very concerned to make sure. They had visited other facilities. Mm-hmm. And, of course, once you build something, no matter who you are or where you are, you always think, I wish I had done this instead of this. So that's just what their comments are. So thank you.
Sure.
I think that's called hindsight, isn't it? Yeah. But we did have a consultant. Could you speak to that, City Manager?
I'm happy to. So just various comments. So we did engage with various user groups, made sure we had multiple opportunities for the potential tenants or potential tournament promoters to have input in the design. I know you and or Tim in different events or different times went to visit, 4 or 5 different facilities to kind of get that input. as well. And so I went on one visit. I know it went to one or two as well. So we've been pretty intentional about the design. We did have, as Mayor referenced, a sports tourism consultant, a gentleman who specializes in these types of facilities, who advised us both on a pre-market perspective or pre-design perspective. And then he's been a consultant during the design process with the architectural team. And I know this particular architectural firm has done multiple similar facilities. I don't remember the exact number, but a double-digit number of these similar facilities. So there was quite a bit of expertise. And then just, of course, the expertise that our own staff has. Amanda, from a programmatic perspective, and even as a parent, has been in a lot of these facilities, and Tim is very familiar with them as well. So we have quite a bit of expertise in this regard in-house. So felt like we've had a pretty strong, well-rounded team as far as looking at the design considerations. And then, as Leland finally referenced, ultimately dictated by the site. Ultimately, the site's going to determine the footprint, which then kind of work backwards in to see how we can maximize the space is what we've been trying to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, I guess we'll go to Fire Station 3 update. Leland Hancock, City Manager.
Happy to give the next update as well. Fire Station 3, obviously our fire department is super excited about this station. Operation Firehouse is something the commission has been dedicated to with some of the updates to the various stations that have gone on, from the remodel of Station 2 to the new fire training facility. Station 3 is your upcoming new rebuild, and then Station 1 and Station 4 will be total rebuilds as well in the next 2 years. I can't say that there's a firefighter that is not happy because I've heard nothing but rave reviews from the replacement of this station in particular, probably one of our older stations or oldest station that we have. I won't say it's an antiquated facility, but by this design, it is very antiquated by modern design. So this new station will accommodate an extra bay for the different apparatus that they use. Obviously, they have ladder trucks and rescue trucks, pumper trucks, boats, and various other items that they use to rescue people when they're in dire straits or those situations where they need the fire department. You'll also have some additional area in this station that didn't exist in the current station for decon. I know Chief gave a presentation about the cancer prevention. So as these firefighters come back from a fire, they'll have the ability to go and take their gear off, put their gear into bunker washing stations, hang the gear out to dry, cleanse themselves before they go into the living quarters with the effort to get those soot, carcinogens, anything else they've been dealing with in the particular fires. Each one's situation is different before they go into their living quarters. You'll also see an expanded living area in the living quarters where they can train and see their various videos that they watch, and from rope training to CPR and the various things that they do going about each day. It will be a two-level station with the living quarters above and the daytime station below, where they have workouts. I'm sorry, I skipped over the layout, so apologize about that. I got ahead of myself. If you can see, we will tear down the current station. I'll step back for a second. We did purchase the adjacent house just west of the current station. That has since been demolished. Thank you, Public Works, for that. And for that opportunity, it gives the space that we need to grow this station. So as you can see on the left-hand side, that's where the trucks will flow in and then make a right-hand turn and pull into the bays, with the living side of the station on the far right side of the screen. There's also Hopes. The fire department is one. They have plenty of equipment and gear. They always need more space. Depending how the budget goes in this project, how bids come in, there's the option for some additional storage space in the back. They don't hesitate to ask for additional things. It's one group. I always pick on parks, but I think fire can be a little more demanding at times of their needs as well. But back into the station design, you can see in the red area, or kind of pinkish red area, where the apparatus stay. All of those areas outside of where the equipment is parked is where those decon stations are for their equipment and themselves. And then you have what we'll call the living quarters, your kitchen, your workout space in yellow, and then their training areas in green. And then on the second floor, which is in the middle of the drawing there, that is their basically nighttime areas where they would sleep. We've also made accommodations for the male-female changes that we've had in the fire department, so we can accommodate a co-ed group in the building, not only in individual bunk spaces instead of the typical dormitory style that we have at most stations now. And then, of course, the shower facilities and all of those areas to accommodate both groups. That's something that most of the individuals, whether they're training, they're reading, everybody kind of needs their own little space. When you're spending 24 hours with each other, you need a space where you can get away and go in your own room and relax, read, whatever it may be, and just get away from the rest. And then obviously you're there if needed for a call out. And when that call out does come, I know I've talked to 4 or 5 firefighters this week in conversation. This will be the first station that we've built with a fire pole. So
took the words right out of my mouth.
So they're excited to see that, especially some of the younger firefighters as well who have not had that experience, but it's kind of the nostalgia of the fire service, and that is something that's a new trend across the U.S. To have those fire poles. You see those in a lot of the new station designs, and I can assure you that the chief and his team, all the fire department has had input on this station. We've traveled to Nashville and Bowling Green, Lexington, various different places to see all of the new stations and different amenities and things that have been included in each one of those stations. And we tried to maximize that and include that in this station for we call it a perfect design, but perfect for this community.
Can you remind the public where this is?
This will be on Cravens Avenue, just about a half a block from Cravens Pool.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
That's all I've got, Mayor. I'll happy to answer any of the questions, and I've got Chief here. If you have any technical questions, I obviously don't fight fires, but he can answer those questions as well.
I believe we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is city project list. City Manager Nate Pagan.
Thank you, Mayor. The list has been in your packet for review, and I know you have a hard copy available as well. So if you have any questions about that, we're happy to address those. Really nothing specific I'll point out this month, so just entertain any questions you might have.
Any questions? Commissioner Smith Wright.
Can you give me an update on the bridge? Because I'm getting it every day.
On the bridge lights? Yeah, Leland, I want to step back up. I know the west side is almost fully operational now, so it looks much better. It's probably, 95%?
Yeah, actually the west side is fully functioning. We even made some repairs from the design that was made in the original install of the bridge to fix a few issues we've had, just water intrusion, things like that. But the west side is fully functioning, better than new. Great. Groves, our electrical contractor, been great to work with. Dirk Duper is the man on the ground with that project as well, and has done a fabulous job. They're currently working on the east side of the bridge, and all indications, weather pending, we hope to have it fully lit by the end of the week.
Did it have? Did you have it lit last Thursday? Thursday night.
It did come on Thursday night. That was the first night that about 85% of it came back on.
Well, the reason I ask is because someone was arguing with me that it was on Thursday night. Why now on the night? And I'm going like, it wasn't on Thursday night. Yes, it was. Well, yeah. I wasn't down there, so I didn't see it. I just didn't think it had been on.
Yeah, it was on Thursday with a few glitches. They got those worked out Friday morning, and Friday night it was basically fully functioning as it should on the west side only.
Commissioner Neesmith.
Leland, I've had a couple of questions that I couldn't answer, and I don't know how valuable these are, but I don't need an answer now, but just something to think about. It was brought to my attention that when this went out, and it was out for approximately, how long, 6 weeks?
Yeah, it's about 6 weeks.
And it was in the height of our tourism industry and people being here to see it. And so questions that were asked of me is, were there any contingencies for lack of a better word, like a warranty from the contractors that said when this happened, we'll fix it in a certain number of days? And the other question was, why was it out so long? And if it was out that long, was it because we were waiting on a part or whatever? I think it goes back to some of that transparency that, yes, we knew what happened, and yes, you call the repairer and you have to wait till they decide they're going to repair it or get what they need. But in the future, if we could at least keep some type of information going. Hey, we know you're missing the lights. We're waiting on a part. It's coming from China. That kind of thing. I think it would have stopped a lot of speculation from the community about the fact that the city was saving money, so we weren't paying the electric bill that month. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, unfortunately, you don't have a lightning storm of that magnitude very often, and so when that did occur there in late June, before the 4th of July, it wasn't that we didn't have the parts. We have the parts, multiple pieces in stock, and I know Shaylee, I think we sent out quite a bit of information on that on our social media, and you know, it's a matter of whether people see it at times. I mean, there's a lot of activity that goes on within the city. But a lot of that, the delay was just in the matter of getting the piece of equipment that we needed, and the contractor here, it's such a specialized project, you have to have a specialized boom lift to get up on there, and then with the labor shortage that exists in all industries currently, we had to wait for our contractor to be able to have an opening to get to us because they were taking care of another issue. We did have a warranty on the bridge, and we have, that warranty time period has expired, but we do have a maintenance contract with our contractor who installed that, and that they're fabulous. They do a great job. We're actually here the next day doing some inspections on the bridge, but we have to then file for a permit and work with the state to be able to close and do traffic detours. It's not just a matter of having a light bulb out and we just unscrew one and put one back in. There's a lot of computer equipment and controls and different things like that on the bridge. And luckily, we just had some wires that were burning too. We have a lightning protection system on the bridge, but when you have that magnitude of a strike and multiple events happening, at the same time, any system can fail, and that's what we had occur on this. So that conductor has been removed, new conductor has been pulled in, and you see the west side is back and going. But it's just a difficult project to work on. You're on a beam about this wide. You're in there with the lift bending around and working about 165 feet above the water. So it's a very technical, very safety conscious job to go after.
And about 100 degrees that day too, probably.
Yeah, and it has been about 100 degrees every day since.
Okay. I think the lights cost about as much as the bridge did to build, didn't it?
Yeah, and they really make it look amazing, don't they?
That's unbelievable.
It's like Zig Ziglar says, I'd rather explain price 1,000 times than quality once.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing none, I say we are adjourned.